Welcome to our interview today as part of our program that we've had going in First Baptist for a couple of years now. We're trying to interview every member in our church who has served in the military. And we've gotten towards the end of this with just a few left to do. We started with World War II. This morning, I'd like to welcome Bob Mulder, who I know quite well. He and I share the same Sunday school class, which happens to be our pastor's Sunday school class. And so I know him quite well. And Bob, welcome to the interview process. And I would like to start out by asking Bob, if he could, to maybe give us a little background information about his early days when he was growing up, and where he grew up, and what his education was, and how he got into the U.S. Navy.
Well, I was born in 1940 in Oak Park, Illinois, a suburb right next to Chicago. And we lived in 2 or 3 different houses, rentals. Finally, Dad bought a house. So grew up there. In 7th grade, we moved from Maywood to Park Ridge, because Dad was concerned about the local high school being kind of really rough. So we moved to Park Ridge in 7th grade, finished grade school there, went to Maine High School. And then from there, a fellow I knew in high school and I interviewed and went and visited University of Michigan. And his dad and my dad got together and said we'd be great roommates. And so we, 1958, trotted off to Ann Arbor, and we were dorm roommates. And it was during the orientation that summer of '58 that they mentioned ROTC. Dad had never mentioned ROTC. I had never mentioned it. But it dawned on me that at that time, things in the world, you were going to get in the service. And I said, well, if we're going to do this, you know, history, if it's your turn to go to war, it's your turn to go to war. It's roulette. And I felt, well, if it's got to be, it's got to be. And it's my turn to serve the country, I'll do it. So, but I'd just soon go in as an officer, as enlisted, if possible. So I'm going to investigate this ROT business. So I missed where you can go as a contract person. They pay for part of your tuition and stuff. So I only had a 2-year obligation, but I joined ROTC. I had a choice of Air Force, Army, and Navy. And really, my uncle had been a naval aviator. My aunt had been a wave. I was a good swimmer. I mean, different thing. My dad was a boater. So I just leaned towards the Navy versus Army or Air Force, and went into Naval ROTC with a 2-year obligation. So after 2 years, I was in business school. After 2 years, you had to make a decision to be, you want to be a line officer, in other words, be a captain of a ship. You want to be a supply officer, which is like the Quartermaster Corps in the Army, the logistics and stuff. Or do you want to go in the Marine Corps? So since I was in business school, I said, I'll go supply corps. So we had a little more of the business training of the Navy the last 2 years. And so upon graduation, went to Athens, Georgia, where the Navy Supply Corps School is. No water in sight, but the school was there. And after 4 months of training, depending on how you finished in your class, you got your choice of what was available. And so I had met my wife-to-be in Georgia. Dad said, you're going south to find a Georgia peach, and it did. She went out to San Francisco with 2 girlfriends to get a job. So there was a ship available out of Alameda, which is across the bay. So I applied for that and got that. Figured if things didn't work out, at least I'm going to see the world. And as it turned out, we went overseas and back 2 or 3 times because it was a supply ship. It carried food, dry, frozen, chill. We'd load out at Alameda and go meet the fleet as needed. The fleet would see an oiler for fuel, us for food, and an ammo ship for ammo. And that's, the idea was to keep the fleet moving if the bases were wiped out. So went overseas and caught the ship, came home, got engaged, went overseas again, came back, got married, and soon we got out, and ended up extending a year. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Thought lightning would strike, that I would be a whatever, a lawyer, a dentist, or whatever. Never struck. I said, well, I'll go one more year, maybe lightning will strike. And, at that time, you could bargain with the Bureau of Personnel. And I said, I'll stay in another year. You can give me a commissary, which is a Navy grocery store, or an exchange, which is a Navy department store. So I thought I'd try to get more business. That'd be good on a resume. So they gave me assistant officer in charge of commissary in Jacksonville, Florida. So off we went to Brooklyn first for training, and then down to Jacksonville. And after a year, in my function there at the commissary, a chief and I, who became very good friends, we saw all the salespeople, determine what was going to go in the commissary. And I saw so many lousy salespeople that I thought I could do better than most of them. So that's how I ended up in sales. So that's.
So you were at
you
were at Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, or Cecil Field, or where?
Yes, in fact, the Naval Air Station in Jacksonville was the headquarters, and we had a branch store in Cecil and a branch store in Mayport, and later a branch store at Glencoe, which was later. So.
I'm very familiar with all that because I was in the Navy, and I went to Air Ground Officer School at Jacksonville Naval Air Station. And my wife grew up in Jacksonville, so I'm very familiar with the area.
Karen taught in Orange Park, which is just south.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a nice area, and I'm sure you enjoyed your year there.
Oh yeah, sure did.
And tell us about any interesting things that you may have done in the Navy that stand out in your mind that you think might be something you'd like to mention.
Well, I guess what the interesting part was, this was before the Vietnam War, so it was not during wartime. But our exercises were like wartime exercises. In fact, I got a picture here. Our ship would be out in the middle of the Pacific. It was not in the Atlantic, we're in Pacific based. And we get the word from the fleet that they want to meet at a certain time in a certain longitude and latitude. So we would be there, and our captain would chart a course, 12 knots, and it was up to the destroyers to come to the starboard side, and the carrier to come to the port side, and they'd throw cables over, and we would send nets of food to these ships while we're all going forward at 12 knots. This is kind of a picture that would show the carrier on the port, and the destroyers would come, and they only got 150 men. They'd load up, and they'd be gone. We'd hit 4 or 5 destroyers while this guy's sitting here with 3,000 people.
I wonder if that'd show up on that camera up there.
I don't know. Give it a
in case.
If not. But that wasn't our ship. This was our ship. It was a converted merchant ship. AF-60 was the Sirius.
Uh-huh.
Whereas the Sirius is a star. Right now it's a radio station, but
well,
But that was kind of neat because we were doing our wartime thing during peacetime. There was a lot of morale there, only 150 men on board, but it was kind of neat. We do it at night, we do it in the daytime, and then the ships would all go to an AO, which is an oiler, and get fuel, and then they go to an AR and get their ammunition, and so visiting 3 ships, they would be replenished in case their bases were wiped out. So that was the whole. I think today's Navy, I think one ship will supply all the oil, the ammo, and the food on one stop. But
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think young people, as they become adults, miss a lot today because most of them don't serve in the military. Back when you were coming along, and me before that, everybody just about served in the military, and I think it was a good thing for you. You learn so much by serving a few years in the military. You learn about other people, you go to other areas of the country, and you meet people from other areas. And it's a great educational process that everybody benefits from that can serve in the military.
I think the Israelis do that. I think the Israelis do that today.
Yeah. And I know, like in Switzerland, they never quit serving. They have their arms at home, is what they told me when I was over there. I guess that's accurate. But it's a great learning experience being in the military.
Never regret it. Never did regret it. Yeah.
Anything else you could tell us that might light our fire?
I'm trying to think.
Now, at what stage in your military career did you and Karen get married?
Let's see. I got out of Michigan in '62, and so went to Navy school for 4 or 5 months. So July to November of '62. We were married in October '63.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, and we were married at the Presidio. I don't know if you ever heard of the Presidio?
Yeah.
Army base at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge. And of course, the ironical thing, I was brought up at best as a lukewarm Episcopalian, and here she is coming from a Baptist family, a devout Baptist family. And so here we are, truly unequally yoked, so to speak. We got married anyway, had a short visit with the chaplain of the Protestant chapel there at the Presidio. Had a very small wedding. My aunt and uncle came, both hadn't been in the Navy. Mother came. Other parents couldn't be there for other reasons, so it was very small wedding. But then, one Sunday we go to the Episcopal church, next Sunday we go to the Baptist church, and it was hard for me to take the guy in the business suit didn't have the robes, didn't have the procession, didn't have the kneeling pads and things like that. But his sermon always spoke to me. It made a lot of sense and challenged you. So it was 1967 in Daytona Beach that an evangelist came through First Baptist Daytona, where you put your head down, and he says, raise your hand, and I raised my hand and went forward. So it was 1967. So from then on, it was both of us were Baptists. So.
You had to be dipped, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I always loved C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity, and the way he explained the faith, all the Christian faiths. He always said, and I tend to agree with it, if you are a Christian and you can't determine which is the best denomination that you should be, look at it like going into an office building with just one floor, but you have doors on either side down this long passageway of different denominations. Just go pick out the one you like, and you'll be all right if you're just a Christian. And I always loved his explanation of it, and that's the way I tend to feel about it.
Yeah.
Whatever Christian religion suits you best, I think will serve you well and get you to heaven if you go by it.
The book that really was inspiring to me was, I think one of our deacons gave it to me. We were in an evangelical free church in Barrington, Illinois. We'd worked our way around out of the service. The kids were 4 and 6. Time for Dad to get serious about being leader in the family. And it was in that church a deacon gave me More Than Just a Carpenter by Josh McDowell. Now, Josh McDowell, he happens to be in front of our Mature Living magazine now in Sunday school. Here's a guy that gave up his legal career for I don't know how many years to prove that the Trinity is not true, and only became a believer. So, walking you through all that was a very convincing book to me. But it was very interesting. And then it was so it was 67 till like 75, undiscipled, but when we got the Evangelical Free Church in Barrington, and the kids were coming up, that was time to get involved. So, very interesting time.
Well, I think that faith in your life is so important. And another thing that this philosophy always interested me is a philosophy of let's do this. Let's try being a Christian. Because if you live the Christian life what our faith teaches us, and you live that life, even if you aren't sure, then you've got a lot better chance of making it through this life in a good, respectable manner, doing the right thing, living by the golden rule. And I think if you do that long enough in your life, you'll realize that you really are a Christian.
Yeah, I agree. I remember the Bible in our house when I was little was this huge family Bible. And we never got referred to it. Mom and Dad never referred to it. The only thing I think in the front, they kept track of births and weddings and deaths, that's all. And so, and coming up Episcopalian, they got me to be an altar boy, an acolyte they call it. That's all right, but all I knew was the prayer book. Didn't know the Bible. I thought that was, didn't really know about it. I thought Vacation Bible School, I thought Sunday school was for little kids, and didn't know the Bible at all coming up. So, but you're right, the Bible it's a history book, it's a guidebook for joyful living. It's more than, you know, just all this, people look at it and all that hard to understand scripture, but it's, you know, it's invaluable. So,
no doubt
but
about
it takes forever sometimes to dawn on you that how valuable it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is a great church right here that you and I are both members of. We're very fortunate to be a member of this church because it's a great church. It has a lot of good people that adhere to the Christian faith, and it's just a great place to be.
Well, we've been here maybe 8 years now since we moved from Athens. And it's amazing it's taken this long. I mean, I heard the term worldview, I think when Rick Warren had that, when he interviewed Barack Obama and then John McCain, same questions at different times, because he wanted to try to determine for him and all the viewers what their worldview was. So I never really thought of the term worldview. Everyone has a view of the world, how it was done. But then I realized after coming here and understanding, as Dr. Baxter says so often, we're born selfish, and then going through the Truth Project to understand how the founders put together, the government and the Constitution. And then you go back to Dr. Baxter, 4th of July, maybe 2 years ago, he talked about the key things the founder fathers had was, one, they were believing in the, I'm trying to remember now, was so important that they put their trust in God and distrust in human nature. Those are the two things. So you can do this balance of power with the Justice Department and the Congress and the executive branch. But if you don't put that moral wrap around it, it doesn't work.
That's right.
So trust in God, distrust in human nature was a big thing to me. And so when you start to think about that, and it all comes down to three of life's big questions, how did the earth get here? Why am I here? And what's going to happen to me when I die? And it's all in the Bible. The answer's there. But a lot of people haven't read the book to find the answers.
That's right.
But that I think determines your worldview. So why does it take 60 years to find that out? It's a shame. So we need to tell our kids
That's right.
that early, and grandkids early, challenge them to think about that.
You can't just read the Bible, you have to study it.
Yeah.
It's a great book, but you spend your whole life studying it. And like you say, if you do that for 60 years, you may start learning it a little bit.
You're right.
Let me don't mean to change the subject,
all right.
but your time in the military and the Navy and the Supply Corps.
Right.
I believe I can say, and you can relate and tell us how this did affect your life afterwards, what you learned in the Navy, how it may have affected your business career when you got out.
It helped, I think. Of course, I had aboard ship, I had dispersing, which was the money. I had the ship store, which was a little store where you had to buy stuff and sell stuff and count for the, you know, come up with the cash or the goods at inventory time. So there was a good learning deal there. And then we had in charge of the food, the mess management they called it, you know, in the Navy for the crew. So you learn dealing with people, and you learn a lot about the accounting. And one of my best friends was my DK, dispersing clerk. He and I, similar age, got married at the same time, and built up a great relationship, kept in touch with each other after we got out. He's since then passed away, but it was a good learning experience from that aspect. Another thing I saw, and it's a shame, but this is the real world, we'd go overseas. We were in Hong Kong one time, and the captain of our ship, fine man, I mean a fine guy, but he had some girlfriend in Hong Kong, brings her on board, lunch, whatever, who knows what. So I see that, and then 2 months later we get back to the States, go into the Golden Gate, that's exciting. And then he greets his family as they come on board. So you see two sides of this man, and you say, wait a minute, that's a shame. That's not going to be me. And so you see the bad part also. You see the sin, and it's just a shame. But anyway, it's there.
How did you come to be a Gideon? I know you're a Gideon.
Well, it was in Athens. We were in Athens. It was, I think it was just we were ready to retire. And part of the way the Gideons work, sometimes they'll go to pastors and ask for candidates. And so I got on a list invited to a little dinner type thing. And it all made sense to me at that time in my life to jump in, and so did it so, and then pretty soon we moved here. So it's been a great experience. Yeah.
Bob, thank you for this interview. Anything else that you might want to mention that I didn't ask you about or you didn't cover?
No, doesn't come to mind. I appreciate the time. Appreciate you doing this for people that serve too.
Well, I hope that the video will be something that your family will enjoy. We'll have a copy of it in the church library. The Archives Committee will have a copy. There will be a copy in our community building downtown on Main Street, which is I forget what they call it, the Historical Society. It's not the Historical Society, but anyway, there will be a copy there. And of course, you'll get a copy to take with you and share with your family.
Okay, good. Appreciate it.
And thank you for coming, and thank you for your friendship.
Thank you.